That's a clown question, bro.
Hi, what's up on you?
So I'm gonna kick some dirt.
He gets on base.
Just a bit outside.
I'm not the type of player that's going to be Johnny Hustle.
If you don't want me to watch the ball, you can go get it out of the ocean.
And welcome to Above Replacement Radio, where we're talking baseball kind of whenever. I am your host, Chris Gianta. On the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran. How you doing, Daniel?
I'm not going to lie. Every time you do the intro, I start to wait and think like, all right, is he going to say the show to be named later? Is he going to say Above Replacement Radio? Is he going to get it? And you got it this time. So I'm proud of you.
Yeah, it's I've become a little more aware.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on how much I think about it. Because the one time I did say show to be named later, I didn't think about it at all.
No. You got to think.
I didn't think about the title at all. But yeah, it's our third episode under that emblem. And we got quite a bit to talk about. This is, we've had one of the, it's arguable whether, I guess, this is probably the biggest trade because it's two big guys.
Mm-hmm.
Biggest trade of the offseason thus far. First move by Steve Cohen, and we've also got
big move, first trade, I think. Period. Like he's signed James McCann, he's signed Trevor May. This is the first big trade that he's made.
Yeah, and we've got some more minor signings that could end up being major. I think one of them has a sort of a deeper meaning, sort of in a way, and there's some, I guess, talks that with a certain free agent that I want to get into because I think there's some sort of 3D chess being played here.
I do too. I think I know where you're going.
Yeah. And then we're getting into our, I think, 8th Hall of Fame bubble case of the week with Billy Wagner to close out the episode. That'll be probably in the final half hour or so. Yeah. But first, we'll get into the biggest move of the offseason. I would say because of the combination of the two. Francisco Lindor and Carlos Carrasco are being traded to the Mets for a lot of players. The package of players going to the Indians are headlined by Andres Jimenez and Ahmed Rosario, and then there's some prospects to go along with them. But very, very big news for the other pinstriped team in New York.
Yes. So we could look at this from the Cleveland side, but I think we should save that because this is good for the Mets. So we'll talk about the Mets because there is a lot to be said on the Cleveland Indians side of this trade. So with that being said, the Mets are coming into next year. They've already made a few big moves. They've gotten Trevor May. They've gotten James McCann. They're still looking towards George Springer and maybe Trevor Bauer, but this is the big one. This is Francisco Lindor, a one-year controlled soon-to-be free agent shortstop, who you could argue is the best shortstop in the league. And I think right now he becomes the face of their franchise. I mean, I don't even think that's up for debate.
The Mets?
Yeah. Him and DeGrom, maybe.
Yeah, I think there's a guy wearing number 48.
Okay, it's between them, but even then, like Lindor is going to be on the field every day.
That's true.
And if you look at it personality-wise, like Lindor is obviously much more outgoing than DeGrom.
Yeah, and he's probably, in terms of the face of what's coming in Queens, I guess
that's the one.
Lindor would be the face of that.
Yeah. So he comes over to the Mets. I really like the fit because the one thing that always worries me about the Mets and their big players that they bring in is that they play in such a huge ballpark that it does concern me that we're going to have another like Jason Bay, because I think we all have PTSD from seeing what he did once he came to the Mets. His power just shrunk. But Lindor isn't necessarily a power guy. I know that he has had 3 30 home run seasons in his career, but like he is a guy that sprays the ball. He can hit doubles into the gap. He has speed. He can turn singles into doubles, doubles into triples, and occasionally he will give you the long ball. But I think this is a good fit for him as far as ballpark-wise. He's going to a team that's obviously looking to contend for a World Series immediately. Like the Mets are in win now mode. I don't even think that's disputable. And they're also going to get Carlos Carrasco.
Yeah, Carlos Carrasco is along with this, it's if it was Lindor alone in this deal, I would say that Darvish to the Padres would have been the biggest move of the offseason. But because both Lindor and Carlos Carrasco are headed to the Mets, I think this is the biggest biggest move of the offseason. And yeah, Carrasco, pretty, I would say, underrated pitcher in baseball. He's just been
absolutely
very, very consistent outside of the year in which he had leukemia, which
you can't really blame that on him.
Yeah, you understand, he had some distractions and something that was taking away from his physical ability. And then he bounced right back in 2020 with a 2.91 ERA.
He was one of my how about that's.
Yeah, he was. He's a guy, if you like strikeouts, you like Carlos Carrasco. If you like run prevention, you also like Carlos Carrasco. If you like, I guess maybe not in the past couple years, but if you like guys that can win the ball game, he led the league in wins in 2017. So all around, very good pitcher. And joining a pretty now deep Mets rotation with DeGrom, Stroman, now Carrasco, and Syndergaard.
When he comes back in like June.
That's true. That's he's not in the rotation currently, I guess.
By the way, do you think, because my initial reaction was this, when the Mets traded for Marcus Stroman in 2019, I always knew that their intentions for him was 2020 and beyond. Even though he was going to be a free agent after 2020, they definitely planned on re-signing him and making him a part of this bigger rotation. I know that the argument is that was a completely different group of people, but I think the Mets have Marcus Stroman in the exact scenario that they pictured him right now.
Even like Cohen probably would have pursued him on the market even if he just had gone into the market.
Yeah. And he accepted the qualifying offer, so it's not necessarily like it would have been much different if the Wilpons were still in town or if Brody Van Wagenen was still in town.
If Stroman or if the Wilpons were in town, you're saying that Stroman would have taken the qualifying offer?
It's the qualifying offer. Like, I'm sure the Wilpons would have offered it. It's kind of a bare minimum thing to do with an incoming free agent. And I don't think it would have changed. I'm certain that Steve Cohen did have an impact in his decision to accept it, but I don't think it would have been too much different if the same ownership was still in.
Maybe not too much different, but I do remember, I think Stroman tweeted something about Cohen buying the Mets and like.
Well, sure. There is reason to be excited, of course.
Yeah, sort of implying that like he's ready to be a part of what he's building. But it could have been pretty similar. But anyway, like, yeah, the rotation is very respectable right now. It's not just DeGrom at the top and then kind of falls after that, which is what it was last year, especially without Stroman or Syndergaard.
Yeah.
Now you have a very respectable rotation. The lineup we've kind of talked about is respectable in its own right. Even like, Pete Alonso had a down year last year. That's probably not going to happen again. McNeil.
It's hard to make too many judgments based off of a 60-game sample.
Exactly. You have McNeil, Michael Conforto, now Francisco Lindor.
Dom Smith had a big year.
Dominic Smith, James McCann.
Yeah.
You have a very respectable team with the Mets there, and also what should be noted, I guess, as we talk about the future of this Mets team, is this isn't my take. I kind of took it off of Twitter. I forget who said it, but the Mets the Mets traded both of their possible shortstops of the future in Jimenez and Rosario, it seems like they fully 100% plan on extending Francisco Lindor.
It seems like it. I mean, Steve Cohen is kind of in a really good spot. He hasn't had financial losses from the pandemic strictly based on the losses from the MLB season because, of course, he wasn't there last year. He also comes in as the richest owner in baseball and a team that has plenty of working room before they hit the luxury tax. And yeah, I would be honestly at this point, I'd be very surprised if Francisco Lindor hits free agency.
Yeah, for sure. I guess it would be considered much more greatly that he's taken out of that great shortstop free agent class that will be happening
Yeah,
after this year with
Correa,
Seager, Correa. I think
Story.
there's a couple, Story. I think.
Yeah, big deal.
Because he started in 2016, so 2021 would be his 6th year.
That's right.
Of control. And yeah, he wasn't held back. He played on opening day, had a spectacular opening day.
Correa was held back in Seager. I think with Seager was a September call-up in 15, but he wasn't really anticipated to be on the roster in 15. Anyway, I want to go over one quick stat I found to show how underrated Carlos Carrasco is, especially in the context of this trade. So from 2017 to 2020, Francisco Lindor has a 120 OPS plus. It's pretty good. It means he was about 20% above average offensively in that time. Carrasco since 2017, a 126 ERA plus. So Carrasco, in a way, was actually more dominant at his particular craft than Francisco Lindor was. And I know that Francisco Lindor is a defensively based player. He's stronger, in the field than he is with the bat. But and that's not a knock against Lindor at all. It's just to shine a light on Carlos Carrasco to show that how good he really has been in the last 4 seasons.
Yeah, and ERA plus, it's harder. It's significantly harder to be that much above average. Like the OPS plus leaders go like there's one with there's Babe Ruth with over 200 OPS plus. Like there's Ted Williams with 191. There's Bonds with 182. The ERA plus leaders go Mariano Rivera at 205, he's a reliever. And then the next best is Clayton Kershaw, who's in the 150s. So it's a lot harder to have a higher ERA plus than like OPS plus. It's harder to separate yourself like that.
Yeah.
And Carrasco is sort of doing that. And yeah, his dominance has kind of gone under the radar because he's pitching within like a fantastic staff. And, at one point the staff was Corey Kluber's, and then at another point and now it's Shane Bieber's pitching staff. So he's kind of been caught up in all that, but he's been.
And Carrasco kind of moves into a role where he gets to be the same type of pitcher. Like he doesn't, he's never had to lead a rotation in Cleveland, and he's always succeeded under that method. And now he comes into a rotation in Queens where you have DeGrom, you have Syndergaard coming back, you have Stroman. There are other guys that they can, that have the same role where Carrasco doesn't have to step up and be that guy or the guy.
Yeah, exactly. He can kind of go about his business the same way he was in Cleveland for sure.
Yeah. And he can probably bring a lot more knowledge over in New York.
Like,
the Indians have a pitching factory, so there's obviously something that he took from that he can now apply to the Mets.
Yeah, that's true. And he worked in that pitching factory. He was teammates with like Trevor Bauer for like
a while,
5-6 years, something like that. Not saying that Trevor Bauer is like the end all be all for pitching evolution, but I would guess it helps being with him for 5+ years or whatever it ended up being. But yeah, like biggest move for the Mets thus far. The Mets and Padres are fighting right now for the biggest offseason winners thus far. And I guess maybe we transition to the Indians here and what it means for them. It's just Paul Dolan. We've talked about Paul Dolan in the past repetitively. He didn't want to pay Francisco Lindor.
Yeah, this goes
Clearly.
back. This goes back to the start of the 2019 season, Chris. During spring training, Francisco Lindor was coming into that year with 3 years left on his deal. He was halfway through his first contract. He just became ARB eligible. After 1 year of ARB, all Paul Dolan had to say was enjoy him. As a direct quote, he said enjoy him because you know he's not going to be here for long. And it's really sad when you're the Indians and you've had, for the entirety of the last 20 years, you've had a franchise player, a guy that shapes the entire build of what your franchise is, a team that's gone to the playoffs consistently around once every 10 years or so. And every single time they're let go, Jim Thome ended up leaving. Kenny Lofton ended up leaving. Albert Bell ended up leaving. Manny Ramirez ended up leaving. That's the early 90s or the late 90s, early 2000s teams. And then you bring in 2007, Grady Sizemore eventually leaves. Travis Hafner, I think, eventually left. I could be wrong there. But CC Sabathia left. I mean, all those guys left. And now you're coming into this, group of Indians where you've already traded Trevor Bauer. You've already traded Corey Kluber. You've already traded Mike Clevenger. And now you have Francisco Lindor. By the way, I forgot to mention Kenny Lofton. He also left. He got traded. Francisco Lindor, the face of your franchise, Mr. Smile, a 2-time Gold Glover, a Platinum Glover, 4-time All-Star, 2-time Silver Slugger. With 1 year left on his deal, actually not even with 1 year, with 3 years left on his deal, most people weren't even thinking about the idea of him not being on the Indians yet. And all you could say is enjoy him. And if you consistently can't pay guys like this and you're in a market that's expected to win a lot, why do you still own the team? Why are you still here? Why are you building a team that is worth $35 million going into 2021 if you can't afford, if you're expected to win and you keep building up these really talented players every single year?
Yeah, it is. It's odd. It just seems like an investment for him financially, because he will walk away from all of this richer for sure,
Which is a shame.
as most owners do.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's one of those what if scenarios. What if, like, the Indians probably would have won a championship by now if they were as financially flexible as, teams that regularly won championships.
And to play devil's advocate here, like, I know that they have, like, Paul Dolan has, end up putting teams in a really good position to win. They were obviously 2 outs away from a championship in 97. They had 3 chances to win 1 game in 2016. They should have won in 2017. They were up 2-0 on the Yankees. But, obviously they do put teams out there that can win games. But at the end of the day, they're not putting themselves in a position to win based on what the owner does. It's the players on the field that ended up getting, screwed over, like Francisco Lindor here, where they're not even giving him a choice to be an Indian for life.
Yeah, and it's like it's the players and upper management, like general, like whoever the general manager is, makes where they're like in deals where they have to be like, where they have to trade a guy like Lindor. They'll get a good return back. The Indians are good at winning trades, but sometimes that's not all what it's about.
I wouldn't say it's the case here.
Yeah. And we'll see, it all gets, whoever wins trades, it always gets determined like 5 or 6 years later, ultimately. But
by the way, going back to those statements he made about Lindor, about how you need to enjoy him, in that same breath, so he said that I will be paying people $300 million contracts when other teams are paying people $1 billion. So he's openly admitting that he doesn't want to be with the system. He doesn't want to be, among the biggest competitors as far as ownerships in this game. He doesn't want to spend the money. And if that's the case, if you're openly admitting that, what are you doing? Like, why are you still here? Why do you still compete with these guys when you know you don't want to? And you see people obviously getting better players than you.
Yeah. It's weird, you can't really get into the mind of the guy. But yeah.
I have one last point. Why is Jose Ramirez still on this team? Why hasn't he been traded? Why have there been rumors about him? He's supposed to be a free agent after 2021, pending a team option for 22 and 23. I can't imagine he's going to end his career with Cleveland. He's basically the only player on this team, other than Shane Bieber, who's still in the first couple of years of his deal, that has some sort of trade value. He should have been an MVP last year. He's a guy that you can get a lot of value for. You might as well trade him if you're really going to blow it up like this.
Yeah, that's the thing with the Indians is they never quite do a full blow up. They're always kind of muddling around, and sometimes they'll win a division title, sometimes they won't. But yeah, I mean they'll probably milk him for as long as they can. They'll probably have him this year and next year, and maybe trade him in like 2023.
Yeah.
It's just kind of what they do. They've whenever they've traded a guy, they do it, on usually in their last year of control or their second to last year of control. And I can't imagine the team options are very expensive for the Indians, being that the contract itself is 5 years, $26 million, so it can't be that much more than like $10 million, which they're still willing to spend for $10 million a year for a guy like Jose Ramirez. But yeah, he'll probably just be around till his last year of control.
Are Jose Ramirez and Roberto Perez the only players left from 2016? And I guess Carlos Santana, but he's also left at times. Actually, no, Carlos Santana's on the Royals now. Never mind.
Yep, that's true.
He also had the funniest slash line in the league last year.
Yeah, I mean, Carrasco's gone. I'm trying to see here. Was Cesar Hernandez was on the Phillies, right?
Yeah.
Tyler Naquin? Yeah.
Oh, okay, Tyler Naquin, fair enough.
Yeah, he was there. Clevenger is gone. Brad Hand was not there.
Bradley Zimmer? Did he come up in 16? Nope, he did not.
So it seems to be Jose Ramirez and Tyler Naquin.
And Roberto Perez. Yeah, that's it. Wow.
Are the three players still remaining from their 2016 AL pennant winning team? But yeah, any more thoughts on this deal?
It's very weird how. So I saw a tweet this week that said Moneyball isn't about the stats; it's about the market inefficiencies and finding them. And apparently, the market inefficiency in the league right now is actually improving your team, because a lot of teams seem to be very against that, and the Indians are kind of falling into that pit.
Yeah. Oh, and also, I guess we should talk about where we view the Mets in the National League East currently. Yeah. We both agree that the Braves are still the favorites to win the NL East, but I think the percentage chances of the Mets like winning the division go from like maybe 10% to 20%, 25%. And I think like it's the NL East we've talked about, pretty weird division.
Yeah.
And like I would say they're the favorite for second place, but like I don't know, like what do the Nationals look like in a full season? Maybe they won't be as bad as they were last year, even though they were in last place. But it's hard to gauge sort of. But I feel like they should be a favorite to get even in the old school playoff system, like a spot in the wild card right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the Braves, you're obviously sitting here and you're thinking, okay, like the division's not going to be ours. It's not going to be a lock this year. Like in the last, essentially 2 years, I won't really count 2018 because they weren't expected to win the division that year. But, 2019, 2020, the Braves were, they had everything to lose in that division. This year, I still think it's the same, but, the Braves obviously are on alert now that the Mets are coming, and they are making every move to get themselves to where the Braves are at. If you're the Mets, you should still make the playoffs. Like this team should make the playoffs. It absolutely should. Whether that be the division, whether that be the wild card, regardless of if there's expanded playoffs or not, this team should have the record to make it to the division. By the way, if they go with the original division format, like the original playoff format with 2 wild card teams, it'd be really funny if we get like a Padres Mets or a Dodgers Mets wild card game.
Because of
just because it's like the Padres and the Mets. Okay, let's say it's Padres Mets. Those are the 2 like offseason winners at this point.
yeah.
That's neither of them win the division, and they play in a 1-game playoff to decide who will play the top team. Probably.
Yeah, it would be funny if it was like for the wild card game, like maybe DeGrom was already had like pitched the day before, and it ends up being like Carrasco versus Snell or something like that.
Yeah, and then there's the NL Central team.
Yeah, the NL Central team might be the NFC East team of 2021.
You're just sitting around waiting in this division so you can lose to an NL East team or an NL West team.
Yeah, I mean, like, we might see another 83 win Cardinals team win the division. Like, that's very possible.
Yep.
And like, I don't know. I don't think they'd win the World Series, but they didn't think that at the time either. So
2006.
Back in 06.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's gonna be weird. Going to be interesting, yeah. So anyway, that was not the only news of the in the world of baseball in the past week. Some more minor deals, but still, pretty big deals. In a way, I guess that's contradictory. But yeah, Blake Treinen, who you may have known from his time with the A's, and last year pitched with the Dodgers, did well in the playoffs, did well in general. He re-signed with the Dodgers for 2 years, close to $18 million.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking Treinen could possibly sneak in and be the Dodgers closer at some point.
He probably could. I mean, we've seen for a couple of years now that Kenley has sort of been fading a little bit. Blake Treinen, if he does, he was about a midway point between his 2018 and 2019 last year, which is really what they needed him to be. I mean, you can't really expect him to replicate an 0.78 ERA with a 5.31 ERA plus, but you expect better than a 4.91 ERA. And a significant drop off in strikeout numbers and a big rise in walk numbers. And that's really all they need to be. I mean, he did exactly what they wanted him to do last season. And I still think there is room for improvement. And his run prevention was probably, it looks like his run prevention was really milked by a few bad starts, or a few bad outings rather. But this is a good move for the Dodgers. It's obviously a team that you see, they won the World Series. They are the measuring stick, but the Padres, they're making those moves and they want that division. So the Dodgers are going to need every secure move possible to ensure that the NL West stays in Los Angeles.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe I was hyping up Treinen a little too much. 4.76 ERA in the playoffs. I guess
it was
a couple bad outings, but I guess that's every reliever. But yeah, he's definitely he's usually pretty reliable. I think he should be pretty good in that Dodgers bullpen. I guess his strikeout numbers are going down a little bit. Oakland, I don't know. Oakland seemed to fix him a little bit, but then he had a bad year in 2019, but that could have been due to injury. And now, kind of in a midpoint. I mean, I guess next year in a full season will be kind of a defining point in how we look at Blake Treinen, because he only pitched like 25. He only pitched 25 and 2/3 innings last year. But this is just the type of move that the Dodgers can make. If they're unsure of a guy, they can still sign him for $18 million. It's not that big of a deal.
And they also got Tommy Kahnle in the last couple of weeks, so like that really. That's another move to bolster their bullpen. Yeah,
Kahnle, I believe.
I don't know if he's going to be able to pitch too much next year because he got Tommy John surgery in like August.
Yeah, Canely likely won't be pitching
Yeah.
very much in 2021, but it was a 2-year deal, or it was a 2-year deal.
I mean, you can't really sign him to a 1-year deal. That'd be kind of stupid.
Yeah, so that they could have him in 2022.
Yeah. It's basically like a 1-year deal, but with 2 years of salary.
Yes. And I guess Jansen still, in terms of run prevention, did have a better year than Treinen did last year. So maybe I should get off of.
And they're
Canely
roughly
a
the
little
same
bit.
age too, looks like.
Yep, they are. It just seems Jansen's a lot older because he's been.
I think it's because when Jansen fails, it's more notable because he's been the closer for so long and he's on the pedestal of being one of the best relievers in the game for the last 10 years plus.
Yeah.
And Treinen, obviously, he doesn't expect there isn't as much expected from him, but when Jansen, fails, it's gets hyped up a lot more.
Yeah, for sure. And he had crazy dominant years in 16 and 17, and it's been a little different, but yeah, he's still pretty good. And I guess his stuff is not as effective as it used to be, but we will see with the Dodgers bullpen, because I guess that was sort of a concern back in the postseason, but didn't end up biting them at all in the end. But yeah, that's the Blake Treinen deal. And the last little minor deal that we're talking about is the Nationals signed Kyle Schwarber for 1 year, $10 million. Still, it is unclear whether there will be a DH or not in the NL, so we will see where he ends up in the lineup or in the field, or if he has to be in the field at all. But the Nationals looking to get some a little bump in offense.
Yeah, I like this move a lot. Kyle Schwarber is one of my guys to watch at the beginning of the season in 2020. Obviously, that didn't end up working out too well, but I still think that he's got a lot of potential to be strong for the Nationals. I mean, he's obviously an upgrade because you were looking at Andrew Stevenson to have that starting role in the outfield instead. But instead, we're now looking at Kyle Schwarber, who's been one of, discarding. I know you can't just take out 2020, but if you were to do that, you are still looking at one of the strongest players in the league is from an offensive standpoint. And I know his defense needs some work. But he is still 27, so it's not like, he's a lost cause, so to speak.
Yeah, but career-wise, a 113 OPS plus, 480 slugging is pretty notable if you need some power from a guy. He's a guy that can deliver upon that. And I mean, the Nationals, I guess after last season when Rendon left, we were like, all right, this lineup isn't really that deep. And I guess Trey Turner has stepped up in a big way, but Howie Kendrick has just retired. Eric Thames was not very good, and he's left. And I guess they traded for Josh Bell, who's kind of a question mark right now. So I guess they're kind of looking at guys who were good at points, guys that can hit the ball hard for sure. Kyle Schwarber definitely falls in that category, and seeing what they can do with them.
He's a guy who definitely could benefit from a change of scenery. I know that Chicago's in a weird spot right now where they're, they are rebuilding even though they won the division last year. But I still think that is the right move on their part. And I know that, Schwarber is a free agent who was non-tendered, so this is not exactly about the Cubs. But, on that team, it seemed like no one was really set for a career year in 2021. So Kyle Schwarber ended up going. It's one of the pieces from their 2016 team. And I think that he has a chance to make a difference in this Washington lineup. He's going to be an upgrade, and he needs to work on his defense. And I think I kind of said everything I really needed to before. I mean, he's only 27, so he does certainly have time to figure some stuff out. And if he can get back to that 2017, 2019 form of offense, the Nationals are looking a lot better with him in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's a guy who, is talked about, I guess, on baseball Twitter. People point out like his savant stats and like look at his
savant was awesome in 2019. I will say that.
Yeah, look at his expected slugging, look at his hard hit percentage. A lot of his lack of success sometimes has to do with him not hitting the ball, having a high strikeout rate. He had more than a strikeout per game last year, but maybe I don't recall the Nationals like as of late getting a player and sort of transforming him offensively, but maybe that can be
maybe that's where it starts. I guess Howie Kendrick you could look at.
I guess Howie Kendrick. He kind of had,
or Asdrubal Cabrera, because he came over in 2019 and then raked.
Yeah, Harry Kendrick did, in his second to last year in baseball, had his best offensive year. So I guess maybe that is a possibility.
Yeah, Asdrubal Cabrera came over to the Nationals in 2019 and then hit 969 OPS with them for the remainder of that season.
But anyway, the last piece of news we'll be talking about. So it appears that DJ LeMahieu and the Yankees are not close in terms of contract negotiations, and he's considering looking into other teams like the Blue Jays, the Mets, and I forget the other team that was mentioned.
It was the Blue Jays, the Mets, and the Dodgers.
Possibly.
I'm pretty sure the Dodgers were definitely talking to him. I know that.
Yeah, and I think this is a bit of I think this word got out not accidentally.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a scenario where I think a lot going into the offseason, I don't know how executives were looking at this, but I think from a fan standpoint, it seemed like a lock that DJ LeMahieu was going to go back to the Yankees. If I was presented with that one, I would have said I wouldn't even have given it a second thought. Like, it would have been like, yeah, he goes to the Yankees and that's that. Seems like that's not exactly the case, and it certainly could have got out to give other teams word that they had a real fighting chance. Teams like the Blue Jays, maybe even the Mets, maybe the Dodgers that are like, oh, wait, the Yankees aren't in on him. Well, let's go get him. Let's steal him. And I kind of understand where the Yankees are coming from, but I still don't agree with their logic, because LeMahieu is a guy that's fairly old. This is his second free agency, I believe. And this is his second free agency. He's going into his age 32 season, and he's been a guy that's only played in hitter-friendly ballparks his entire career. So it is shaky, especially if you want to give him like a 5-6 year deal that's going to take him into age 37, which isn't ideal considering what you project he'll be doing at that point. But if you're the Yankees, you're trying to win now, and DJ LeMahieu makes you a better team right now and can win you a World Series right now. Doesn't really matter what your team's going to look like in 2025. You can figure that out as you go because you're the Yankees and you're usually good at doing that stuff. I don't understand why the Yankees are so against, getting this guy that will very clearly put them over the top or keep them over the top rather, and make them into a World Series contender, because you saw, between 2018 and 2019 when DJ LeMahieu came over, he gave that Yankee offense a whole new identity. It is weird because in 2018, they did set the record for most home runs hit by a single team in 1 year, but it still felt like something was missing. And DJ LeMahieu turned out to be just that. And, a couple unlucky playoff attempts, a couple bounces don't go their way in 2020 and 2019 in the playoffs. But if you're going to get rid of that guy, it's hard to picture the Yankees being over the top and winning a World Series going forward.
Yeah, for sure. And my thing, and I guess I should read what we saw on the internet. This is a tweet from Zach Kreiser. It says the Yankees are slow playing DJ LeMahieu as the league slow plays its free agents generally. and DJ has just about had it. Source tells at T Brown Yahoo, the star hitter has told his reps to talk to other teams, and it's a quote. And then it's a picture of a quote where he's basically saying, I want to look at the Dodgers, Blue Jays, Mets more, and among other teams, but, targeting those three teams that have shown particular interest. But yeah, I think it made me believe even more, and this is odd how I'm believing in this, I guess, but it makes me believe even more that the Yankees and LeMahieu will get a deal done, because I think DJ LeMahieu wants to be with the Yankees.
I do too.
I think he definitely does, and he probably had his agent get this word out there. It's come up multiple times that the Yankees and LeMahieu are, not really particularly close in contract negotiations.
The first report said that they were $25 million apart.
Yeah, it's been more public than any, and I guess it's different for him because this would be him going back to another team. But like, you're not seeing other free agents get this type of play. So I think he's basically saying, he's basically letting the word get out that he's not satisfied with what the Yankees are paying. And then maybe the Yankees get a little more pressure to up the price a little bit, because he's letting the word get out there for sure. And, he definitely, because I feel like if he didn't really care about the Yankees, he'd just be like, all right, I'm on to another team. I don't really care about going back to the Yankees if they're going to offer me this. He definitely wants to be with the Yankees. And but he also wants that number to be high. Mm-hmm. And I think he's letting everybody know about it.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, when you have that scenario where everyone just assumes he's going back to the Yankees probably have that in mind and are thinking, okay, maybe we could sneakily lowball him here, give him less than what he really deserves. And DJ LeMahieu, for all his credit, he's not stepping down to that. And if that goes public, that certainly does give the Yankees a lot of more pressure. That is a really good point that you bring up.
Yeah. Like it's not going to be easy for the Yankees, and LeMahieu. LeMahieu is making sure of that. But yeah, that's all I really had to say about that. I think it's just it tells me personally that he definitely wants to be with the Yankees, but like any free agent would, he wants that number to be high in the dollars column. I feel like he won't feel as comfortable going to a team like the Blue Jays or Dodgers or Mets. He likes the Yankees, but he wants the Yankees to like him a little more. But yeah, I guess that brings us to our bubble case of the week.
Yes.
This is our third to last bubble case of the week before there's actually a result to where these bubble cases end up. And
none of them end up in the Hall of Fame this year, I'll tell you that.
None of them end up in the Hall of Fame. Yeah. It's not, no one is above 75% right now.
No one's going to be.
It's going to be
so. I was telling Chris this off air. It's going to be so depressing on January 26th when MLB Network does 6 hours of election coverage before it's revealed. Like the MLB Twitter account tweets out who will be going to the Hall of Fame. Cooperstown will be enshrining new legends this summer to go along with Derek Jeter, Larry Walker, Ted Simmons, and Marvin Miller, who will be joining them. And then nobody joins them. Not a single person is going to join them this year.
Yeah, I'm wondering if the Anthony Rebers of the world just don't want more people to join Derek Jeter on stage.
That's definitely not it. Speaking of him, he hasn't even put out a ballot yet.
Yeah, I don't know if he'll ever make anything public again. I don't know.
Well, here's the thing, though. I distinctly remember his ballot. He dropped Bonds, Clemens, Vizquel, Manny, and I think Schilling from his ballot last year. He dropped all those guys so he could make an only Jeter ballot. since Jeter isn't on the ballot anymore, he could probably add all those guys back and actually make a somewhat like sufficient looking ballot.
Yeah, it is true. That is good. That is a good point you bring up there. But yeah, Billy Wagner. This is one of the more interesting cases we have. We've talked about mostly position players. We've talked about 2 starting pitchers, and one of them would be in, without the internet, I guess.
Yes.
And this is a relief pitcher, and relief pitchers are odd because like they definitely don't have the production, and wins above replacement does not benefit them at all. But we agree that closers definitely have a
they have a steeper hill to climb.
Yeah, they have a steeper hill to climb, and like, wins above replacement doesn't necessarily appropriately value their role on a team in
That's
terms
correct.
of, a guy that comes in the 9th inning and secures the victory for you. And Billy Wagner was one of the best to do it in the 9th inning.
Yeah.
And he was, he joins kind of a more modern look at the closer. I think a lot of relief pitchers in the Hall of Fame already, like, Dennis Eckersley, Goose Gossage, Hoyt Wilhelm, Raleigh Fingers. Those were guys who would consistently get like 6-7 out saves, and their save percentages would plummet not necessarily plummet, but it would be significantly lower because of that. And maybe they weren't looked at to be as dominant. Billy Wagner, Mariano Rivera, Trevor Hoffman were guys that were mostly put in to get the final 3 outs, and that was that.
Yeah. So can I say something real quick about Eckersley?
Yes.
So he was obviously a starter for a lot of his career, and he became basically a full-time reliever / closer the very year that he came to Oakland in 1987. And from 1987 on, he had a 1.36 ERA plus, 2.96 ERA, and also 774 strikeouts and 789 and 2/3 innings pitched. So just under, 9 strikeouts per 9, 7.7 hits per 9, and pretty good ERA with all things considered for that era.
Yeah. Eckersley is a pretty interesting case. I think most of his innings were from being a starter, and most of his appearances were as a reliever. But yeah, pretty interesting. But yeah, Billy Wagner, we'll talk about where he is at in terms of the Hall of Fame votes and all that. He's in his 6th ballot. He started at 10.5% in 2016, which was his first ballot. And he kind of stayed there until last year. He received a 15% increase from 2019 to 2020, where he went from 16.7% to 31.7%. And currently, as it stands now, has 51.5% of the vote out of 130 known ballots. And he's been one of the guys who's netted some of the most out of everyone.
The three guys that have had big gains this year are 3 guys that we've talked about. Billy Wagner, of course, right now, and then previous bubble cases like Scott Rowland and Todd Helton. Those have been the 3 biggest gains this year, and it's certainly looking real up for these guys that someday they could get in.
Yes, we've noticed it's been a very large increase. Scott Rowland, I think, is at 68% currently.
He could probably get in next year.
Yeah, it's very, very possible. I guess, I wonder what changed in the writers' minds. Maybe they went more into the sabermetrics. I don't know. We'll see.
Possibly. I know. I read one guy's column who added Rowland today, and he literally said, like, after taking further examination, I've noticed that Scott Rowland, like, on an offensive and defensive side of the ball, analytically did live up to that hype and did, would fit well with his Hall of Fame peers. So yeah, that is definitely part of it.
Yeah, it must be. And like, I didn't really I didn't put him on the ballot last year, and I've recognized that more this year. But yeah,
But you didn't know as much last year. Like
yeah,
last year was kind of an introduction to the Hall of Fame for you. This year I'm giving you the full perspective.
yeah, and like, I was sort of weird about it because I was like, I didn't want to be someone that was like, all right, he has a high WAR, so he's automatically in the Hall of Fame, sort of. Like, I didn't want to just look at his wins above replacement and determine he was
It is weird that WAR particularly gets a lot of hate because it's kind of like the leader of the pack as far as like advanced analytics that have been taking over the game over the last 10 years. Like whenever someone cites how much they hate analytics, it's like, oh, these guys with their WAR, like that's always the first one. And it's interesting because that's kind of the one that tells the whole story better than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only thing really that applies both offense and defense.
Yeah. And as a pitcher, it's like, pitching ability, strikeout ability, peripheral ability, stuff like that.
Production.
Yeah.
With innings and all that, a guy, you see a guy with 250 innings and the same ERA as a guy with 200 innings, 250 inning guy is going to get rewarded for that. But yeah, WAR is definitely, and as we transition into Billy Wagner, WAR is weird with pitchers. Billy Wagner had 27.7 B WAR and 24.0 F WAR, and the average Hall of Fame reliever B WAR is 39.1. But if you take out Dennis Eckersley, who had 361 starts, the average Hall of Fame reliever B WAR is 35.8. So Wagner would be about 8 under that marker. And Wagner has 19.8 peak WAR, best 7 seasons of WAR combined. And that is 6.2 below the average Hall of Fame reliever. And it is 4.5 below average if you take out Eckersley in that comparison. And also on the surface, you can see Billy Wagner, 2.31 career ERA, 2.73 career FIP, and 187 ERA plus in 903.0 innings pitched. He also has 422 saves, which is 6th all time. And in the postseason, he did not necessarily help his case, but it's something to go over in the on the surface stats. 10.03 ERA in just 11 and 2/3 innings pitched in the postseason. And in terms of, looking on the surface in terms of what you see on the standard stat sheet, very comparable to relievers of today's game, like Craig Kimbrell, Aroldis Chapman, and Kenley Jansen. Wagner was kind of the original archetype of that reliever, a guy who can get a lot of strikeouts, strike his way out of situations, and prevent hits a lot was his big thing for sure. Yeah. And like even with walks, I think he still had a better than average walk rate too.
Three walks per 9. Yeah.
Yeah, that's better than average because I think your average pitcher has like 3.5 walks per 9 or something like that.
That's
right. What do we see on the surface from Billy Wagner?
So I made sure to add in that last bit because usually when we do the on the surface stats, we compare them to other players with similar career numbers. That doesn't really exist with Billy Wagner because all the guys that you can compare him to the most are still playing. So that leads me to believe and to evidently say that he was ahead of his time. He was Craig Kimbrell before there was a Craig Kimbrell. He was Aroldis Chapman before there was Aroldis Chapman. He was Kenley Jansen before there was a Kenley Jansen. And those guys, they were our 3, easy picks, even though we only had to pick 2 for relievers of the decade when we did that show last year, right? So Billy Wagner was a guy that sort of almost paved the way for guys like that because of the way he was able to perform. He made it, if you want an idea of what Craig Kimbrell, Aroldis Chapman, or Kenley Jansen's careers would look like, on a more lengthy scale, you're looking at Billy Wagner's career. And the fact that nobody else was able to do it at his time leads me to believe that he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, and we'll get into comparisons. And usually with comparisons, I look at like certain range of WAR, certain range of innings, but we're not going to do that because there's only 8 Hall of Fame relievers. So we'll just take a look at how he compares to some of those Hall of Fame relievers, just in general. See where he lines up. So the first comparison, basically just a number comparison. Billy Wagner versus Bruce Sutter, who's a Hall of Fame reliever, pitched in mostly the 70s and 80s. Wagner and Bruce Sutter, Hall of Fame reliever, by the way. So that's what we're comparing. Best of the best. Wagner had a higher B-WAR, 27.7 to 24.0. Sutter had the higher peak WAR. Sutter actually, ironically enough, had a better peak WAR than actual total wins above replacement. Oddly enough, as he had some negative seasons as well and a pretty short career. But Sutter wins the battle in terms of peak WAR, had 24.3 peak WAR. Wagner had 19.8. Sutter slightly has the edge in terms of JAWS, 24.2 to 23.7. But Wagner, in terms of run prevention, especially compared to his era, has a big advantage. 187 ERA plus and 903 innings pitched. Sutter had a 136 ERA plus and 1,042 innings pitched, and not a huge innings advantage there. So I guess Wagner definitely has the advantage there. But you can see very comparable to a Hall of Fame type reliever. And the second comparison to look at, Billy Wagner versus Lee Smith, who was elected in the
Veterans era in 2018. It was the Today's Game Era Committee in 2018. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he got elected along with
we don't need to talk about that.
Yeah.
We're not going to talk about that. That was the worst thing that ever happened.
But yeah, Lee Smith, he was the all-time saves leader before Trevor Hoffman. If you've heard of him before. And it is funny, like there were Hall of Fame elections while he still had the saves record, and he still was barely breaking 50%.
By the way, do you by chance remember at all where you were when that election happened?
The Today's Game era?
Yeah. Do you have any memory of that?
I remember seeing it, on the internet.
Okay. Because I strictly remember I had been keeping track of it. Like I remember I wasn't as educated on that, era of baseball and who deserved to be in and who not. But I read an article going into it on like who should make it and like who is most likely to make it, who is least likely to make it. And Lee Smith was like the only lock from that day. So I was like, okay, like if Lee Smith makes it, then that's cool. And then like there were 3 players who were least likely, and one of them was Harold Baines. And obviously Harold Baines got the nod, and I remember thinking like, what? Like, are you serious that we're letting this guy in? And then I looked at his baseball reference and I was even more confused because I was like, yeah, no wonder he was least likely. And then my favorite thing was about like 20 minutes after the news was broken, someone on Twitter, like a verified source who had reached out to Baines, said that like he was shocked to find out. I was like, yeah, me too. I was shocked too.
Yeah, that's one of those. I wonder if like Harold Baines is into any of like the sabermetrics and was like, wow, are you sure?
What if he just didn't accept his plaque? He was like, I thank you guys so much, but like I can't do this. Like, I'm not worthy.
You know what? Just give me the plaque. I'll just take it home with me.
Yeah, no, I don't put it in Cooper. Like, it's just like a cool thing to have, but like I don't actually deserve it.
Yeah, a sabermetrician, Harold Baines.
It's like Ryan Tepera's MVP vote.
Yeah, Harold Baines goes up and he's like, for the integrity of this Hall of Fame, I will not be accepting this election into the game's greatest. I definitely do not compare to any of these people over here. So, yeah, like
it's up there with like Mariano Rivera, like Mike Mussina. Who else got in that year? Roy Halladay, he and his family accepted for him. And then Edgar.
It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know if any of you here are aware, I only had 1.8 wins above average. That means I was 1 point, literally. That's what it was.
Are you guys aware that my best win season on Baseball Reference was 4.6?
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
my best.
I've never, on the Baseball Reference website, it says 5+ B WAR is like all-star level. I never hit that mark.
I never
don't
even
know
came
why I'm up
close.
here.
And by the way, like, you know how 50 wins above replacement is like the standard? I had 38.
Yeah.
Like, even 40 is like tough to let slide, but I didn't even get there.
Yeah. And really, like, I didn't really make much of an impact on really any team I played for. It was weird.
No. Like, except for the 83 White Sox. Because that was on his plaque. If you look at his Hall of Fame plaque, it literally says, like, he was the leader of the 1983 Chicago White Sox. First of all, he had a 109 OPS plus on that team. Second of all, they won one playoff game.
Yeah. And he's like, yes, I know I had a better OPS than Derek Jeter, but I was a defensive liability.
Oh, his best WAR season was 4.3, not 4.6. I was giving him some praise there.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
But yeah. Back to Billy Wagner and Lee Smith, how they compare against each other. Billy Wagner, or Lee Smith wins the B WAR battle. He had 28.9. Wagner had 27.7. He also beats him in the peak WAR. He had one more win above replacement in terms of peak WAR than Billy Wagner did. Smith had 24.8 JAWS. Wagner had 23.7, but Wagner was superior in terms of run prevention by a lot. 187 ERA plus in 903 innings, as mentioned before. Smith 132 ERA plus in almost 400 more innings, 1,289 and a third innings pitched. And yeah, had more saves and that nature. But I guess the biggest comparison you can make in terms of Hall of Fame relievers versus Billy Wagner is Trevor Hoffman, because they played in the exact same era.
Yeah.
All the numbers are very, very comparable. And, they basically had the same exact role. That's the best comparison you can make in terms of Billy Wagner versus other Hall of Fame relievers. So Hoffman had 0.3 more B WAR than Billy Wagner did.
But he also played much longer.
Yeah, he did play a good amount longer than Billy Wagner.
And we're talking about WAR per 162. Billy Wagner comes out on top there.
In fact, Billy Wagner had a superior peak WAR to Trevor Hoffman. It was 19.8 to 19.4, and they have the exact same JAWS. So Billy Wagner, very, very comparable in terms of wins above replacement to Trevor Hoffman. And in terms of run prevention, Wagner superior again, 187 ERA plus versus Hoffman's 141. Hoffman had close to 200 more innings pitched than Billy Wagner. So if you can take that into account in terms of production. Also, Wagner had a 558 OPS against. Hoffman's was up to 609. And Hoffman did beat him in save percentage with 88.8%. Wagner had 85.9%, but so, still pretty comparable. And Wagner beats him in strikeouts despite having almost 200 less innings pitched, 1,196 strikeouts to Hoffman's 1,133, if you're big into strikeouts. So what do we see from the comparisons? I see a lot of similarities here.
Yeah, and that's what I'm going for here is like if you put Billy Wagner up with the average Hall of Fame reliever, he hangs.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's more of a debate of whether like how much you value relievers and whether you think Those guys deserve to
Well,
be in the Hall of Fame.
everyone who's voted in the Baseball Hall of Fame for the last 3 years has voted for a reliever at some point.
Yes,
So
that is true. That
it's
is
not
true.
completely off the table.
Yes, that is true. So now we get into the case against and for Billy Wagner. We'll start with the case against. Just generally speaking, putting in relievers can be weird as they don't accumulate many innings or production compared to starters. You know, Billy Wagner had like 900 innings pitched. Kurt Schilling, who we're talking about, had over 3,200, and Mark Burley had over 3,000 innings pitched as well. So it's, in terms of production, it can be interesting how relievers are looked at. Although the argument against that is, they're put in the most crucial of situations. And in fact, if elected, Billy Wagner would have the least amount of innings of anyone going into the Hall of Fame as a pitcher, and the pitcher with the next fewest innings would still have 15% more innings than Billy Wagner did. So he did not produce that many innings. So I guess that's sort of why his wins above replacement is a little lower, even with his very good run prevention. The case against him also could be below average B WAR, below average peak WAR, and below average JAWS for a Hall of Fame reliever. JAWS, by the way, is the average between your total wins above replacement and your peak wins above replacement. That is what JAWS is. So it takes into account both longevity and your dominance in your era, if that was not made aware. And although he is comparable to Trevor Hoffman, Wagner's win probability added, which is a bigger stat for relievers. It benefits relievers a lot. Like, I think Mariano Rivera is 5th or 6th all time, and I guess he did play for great teams, so his win probability added would be higher. But Wagner's win probability added is closer to Jonathan Papelbon and Francisco Rodriguez than it is to Trevor Hoffman. And another case, I guess, with Billy Wagner's number of saves is there are players ahead of him in the saves leaderboard that are not in the Hall of Fame. And also in terms of saves, Wagner only finished top 5 in saves 4 times. If you want to compare him to the other Hall of Fame relievers, Hoffman finished top 5 in saves 10 times compared to 4 times. And Lee Smith finished top 5 11 times. And the last thing you could have against Billy Wagner is that 10.03 playoff ERA kind of puts a little dent in his resume, especially when the importance of relievers is increased more than anyone in the playoffs. So that's the case against Billy Wagner being a Hall of Famer. But now we'll get into the case of why he may be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. So you mentioned the lack of innings pitched, and I do, obviously he only got 900 innings, which isn't a ton on a Hall of Fame standpoint, but he made all 900 of those innings count. He is the strikeouts per 9 all-time leader, minimum 670 innings pitched. And that's not necessarily a cherry pick, because that's still 233 innings below the amount that he pitched. So if you were to, take someone who pitched exactly that many innings less than Billy Wagner in baseball history, they don't have more strikeouts per 9. His 11.9 still reigns at the top. He also had 12 seasons with 45 innings pitched and 10 Ks per 9. He had no other. Okay, so he has 12 of those such seasons, and when he retired, no other reliever in baseball history had more than 8, and currently no other reliever has more than 9. So his 12 seasons with 45 innings pitched and 10 strikeouts per 9 at least are the most by any reliever in baseball history. Also, if we're talking about Mariano Rivera here, the greatest closer of all time, the only unanimous Hall of Famer, If he came out of retirement, faced exactly 782 batters, and he struck out every single one of them, Billy Wagner would still have a higher strikeout percentage than Mariano Rivera career-wise. Just to put in perspective how good he was, he struck out over a third of the batters he faced with a 33.2 strikeout percentage for his career. He is also the only pitcher in the live ball era, that is since 1920, with 700 plus innings pitched and a whip below 1. That is walks plus hits divided by innings pitched. He pitched more innings than he allowed base runners in his career, and no one else has done that with at least 700 innings pitched in the last 100 years. He also has 6 seasons with 190 ERA plus, and 10 plus strikeouts per 9. That is the most in baseball history, and no other reliever has ever had more than 3 of such seasons. He has 6. He's doubled the next best among relievers. He is also the only pitcher in baseball history with 400 innings pitched and 6 or less hits per 9 allowed. That would be 5.99 hits allowed exactly. Also, Billy Wagner, Mariano Rivera, and Hall of Famer Hoyt Wilhelm are the only pitchers in the live ball era to have at least 13 seasons with 40-plus innings pitched and an ERA below 3. He had great run prevention pretty much every year as a reliever. And from 1999 to 2006, which is right around where his peak was, he had the second best reliever F4 in the majors, of course, behind Mariano Rivera. And he was only 4 wins behind him, so it wasn't like it was complete, blown out of the water. And lastly, his 11 seasons with 60 or more strikeouts and 30 or less walks are the most in baseball history. So that is Billy Wagner's Hall of Fame case. Not only do I think he's a Hall of Famer, but I think there's a fair case to be made that he's the second best reliever of all time.
There is a case to be made. Yeah, like a 187 ERA plus is
absurd.
Very, very, very notable.
Yes.
For sure. And yeah, like behind Rivera, it's kind of a race for second. And yeah, Billy Wagner could definitely win that race there. But yeah, that's Billy Wagner.
Mm-hmm.
The case for and against him, definitely very considerable. And yeah, that's the conclusion of this week's little news Hall of Fame case episode. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, want to watch us talk, want to watch all the Hall of Fame breakdowns, go to our YouTube channel. It is called Above Replacement Radio. If you want to follow us on social media, follow me on Twitter at Chris_Gianta. Follow Daniel on both Twitter and Instagram at Daniel_Curran. And also follow the show Instagram at Above Replacement Radio. And we hope you enjoyed this MLB News / Hall of Fame case episode. And we hope to see you on Thursday, where we will be talking about Joe DiMaggio, and on Friday, where we will be talking about I'm forgetting the team we're talking about.
You know it.
It's they're
very recent.
The 2019 Nationals.
Yeah.
We'll be talking about on Friday. So see you then.